to Down Your Unders. Down Your Unders. Review and dissection of content from some of the sharpest minds in the game. Hosted by Adam Camilleri. Art of War. Down Under.
Hello, this big wide world of 40k. We are here to review the new updates to the Drukhari Spicy Boy faction. Komara is here, and they're coming back with a vengeance. Much like Die Hard 3, and just like Die Hard 3, I've gotten the most John McClane of humans that I could find. His name's Ridvan Skari Martinez. Yes, that was tongue-in-cheek. Hello, mate.
Yippee-ki-yay, everybody.
Yippee-ki-yay, indeed, sir. But we are going to be looking at delving, into the Dark City and unpacking this brand new detachment that J-Dub has been loving enough to give your spiky faction, my man. In addition, we're going to be talking and reviewing some of the rules changes or rules clarifications from the rules commentary, which just things in general I think people need to know have happened, because like many, I look at the rules commentary and I would rather eat my own face than try and discern what it's actually telling me. So I have talked to many people on the internet about what the actual things in there that are worth knowing and worth sharing, and hopefully I'll be able to break them down for you in as layman a term as possible. In addition,
like a plan.
Yes, of course, this is a two-part podcast. First part coming out, lovingly curated by Seamus Ronan, Tuesday mornings, Eastern Standard Time. Part two, Ridvan and myself will be answering my Patreon questions, and we'll also be hopefully designing some new first press Drukhari lists for this brand new meta, hopefully hunting some of the things that they found hard to hunt previously, getting some brand new specimens for the arenas. But Ridvan, my man, I'm sorry, and you can find that over Art of War Down Under over on Patreon. Ridvan, tell me about your wares, mate. Sell us. What do you do? Why should people care? I do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me on. If you don't know who I am, I'm Skari. I am probably the Dark Eldar player, the global Dark Eldar player. At least that's my brand. You can find me on YouTube, on Patreon, all that good stuff. I am one of the coaches on the Art of War. And it is a fun time. I'm what's called a faction specialist. I tend to play a single faction. However, I've been playing for 30 years, so I play lots of factions. I play them well. But this is my love. It is the faction I always gravitate back to. And even in the direst of circumstances, you can find me finding ways to make it relevant again.
Mm-hmm.
And it is both challenging and rewarding to be in that sort of situation. And now, every once in a while, the meta circle rotates around and bears forth fruit. And this is one of those times.
Indeed, my man. If you haven't listened to an Adam Skari episode in a while, it's expect the usual high quality that you hopefully have come to enjoy from Art of War Down Under. But it usually gets a little sillier. I can't tell you why. Ridvan just brings it out in me. So expect some more chicanery, some more nonsense, whilst we're wrapped around your informative and beautiful review experience. But we have a brand new detachment. For the very first time, an index has been given a new lease on life. I suppose the closest thing we have to what they've done for Drukhari here by giving them a brand new, fully fleshed out detachment is what they did for Death Guard. And Death Guard essentially got 50%, I guess, of what is happening here. They got a patch fix to their existing one, making it a whole new feel, a whole new play to it by giving it all the extra contagion auras and things like that.
And Votan got a substantial enough change to their detachment rule to rework it. So, Games Workshop not shying away from kind of really tackling an issue. Yeah. And that's good to see.
Two questions for you, mate. What does this mean for the game? The fact that they're willing to go in and just be like, okay, the one we wrote did not work. Here is another one, and please feel free to tell us if this is a good thing you think that they're doing.
So, what does it do for the game? I think what it does is it gives us hope in a good way. It means that if you're at the bottom end of the sort of proverbial tank, right? If you're at the bottom of the food chain. It so far has been every 3 months, right? Every quarter, they've been making sure that they update the rules. And it hasn't necessarily been mutually exclusive to simply just FAQ or simply just
Yep.
points or simply they have shown that they are willing to make changes if they feel that changes are warranted, right? So they did that in the first one. They, really gave things like they really gave, for example, Votan and Death Guard a new lease on life.
Yep.
And now they've kind of doubled back on a couple of that, or clarified a couple of their rules, like with Custodes getting like better like saves against dev wounds and things for clarification. But they've also given a faction that tends to be at the bottom of the meta Mondays, right? A new lease in life, giving them sort of like a picture into it seemed like the design philosophy for what they might be considering moving forward, right? Where it's a taste of what is to come.
100% agree. And in all reality, the detachment we're about to review might be a portion of an upcoming Drukhari Codex. We don't know, and it's just left in our space to speculate. But why was this necessary is the second question. A lot of people will know, but there might be some people who are just joining us very, very early on. I am going to ask dumb questions on purpose during this review, and I do in many reviews. But why was this necessary, mate?
Well, first and foremost, the questions are not going to be dumb, right? They're never dumb questions. The dumbest thing is to not ask questions when you need answers.
Thank you. For giving me permission on my own show to ask questions, Jared.
You're welcome.
But yeah, why was this necessary? Why did GW do this?
There was a surge in popularity for just 40k in general in 9th edition, which was the previous edition of the game. And Drukhari were a very strong faction in that edition, and it drew a lot of players into the playstyle. Fast, aggressive, very hard-hitting close combat units that would essentially trade, or what we call trade, right? Be able to send a small unit that packed a big punch to sort of like punch above its weight class. 10th edition comes out, and close combat has changed. But not only has close combat changed, a lot of the elements of the faction that folks had sort of fallen in love with and the style of play, Incubi, Witches, a Succubus, Lilith, Drazar, right? They'd all sort of like didn't kill anything. They were terrible. And so like the index became index dark lance, which being how many dark lances can you fit into a list, which was great. They're very powerful gun, sure, but then it's very dependent on, can you see your opponent? Does it hit? Does it wound? And then if they were in cover, God forbid they were in cover with,
or they had an invulnerable save,
then all of a sudden your army didn't do anything. And it became an army that didn't really have any way of getting itself out of a pickle once it was in a pickle. And a lot of folks, like, there was a big drop in player, like, playage. Like, people played Eldar or played Inari or just kind of didn't want to play Dark Eldar, to the point where worldwide, I think the representation was like 0.4% or something.
It was absolutely destitute. Quite insane how much the drop off was. But in saying that, there is a huge proportion of Drukhari players who are super faction players, and they migrated to the greener pastures of Eldari.
Yep, using allies and Inari and kind of mixing it in with like fate dice and like being able to use like your Scourge with like your Incarn and things like that. Like that was always an option, a popular option. And it led to, some point changes even in the first update, where things like Ravagers and stuff got touched because they were just in every Eldar list, not necessarily Dark Eldar, which I thought was funny. And now we get this new detachment, new rules, new detachment, new way to play the game, an update to the pain token mechanic, which is like the main mechanic of the Drukhari and how they play. And combined, I feel what you're seeing is it sort of like it harkens back to that style that folks really enjoyed in 9th edition, which is like more aggressive little kill units that have the capacity to like actually do damage, right? And then you can basically formulate a game plan around the ranged pressure, but then have ways to kind of flush the enemy out from behind a wall, right? And I think it appeals to a lot of players, and there's a lot of players who know that this is not like the best faction right now, sure, but it changes the play style, gives people options, and it reinvigorates sort of like the love for the faction in a lot of ways.
More than anything else, I think this has made Drukhari exciting again, because they've always
Yep.
been one of the most exciting, most dynamic armies in the game, and then they just lost 50% of that in this
Yep.
edition. They lost 50% of what made them unique and cool and spicy, and what made people want to play them. And they've really gone out of their way to inject that back in. I think this is a fantastic step they've taken, and to show that they're willing to be this proactive, even in the somewhat still index hammer version of 10th edition, is absolutely fantastic. All right, let's jump into the changes to power from pain. For those who do not know, you gain pain tokens at the start of the battle, depending on how much, depending on the battle size. Most likely that's going to be 3. And then each time you destroy a unit, you gain 1. Each time an enemy unit fails a battle shock, you get another 1. And then you can expend pain tokens for buffs. One of which is empowered in the movement phase or the charge phase. You could reroll advance or charge rolls made for that unit. And here's where the change comes in. You can expend them in the shooting or the fight phase. And each time a model in that unit makes an attack, you can reroll the hit roll. If it is a melee attack, improve the arm penetration characteristic of that attack by 1. Now that is the kicker. So holistically across the board, from in the change from 9th to 10th edition, the AP characteristic of the overwhelming majority of melee weapons went down, was cut in half, if not killed off by 3/4.
Yep.
So it used to be part of the identity of Drukhari that they had armor penetration 3 and or 4 kind of on tap, on demand. That's what they had in spades. They had low strength, ridiculously high AP attacks. Then they had the same strength. The strength didn't go up, but the AP went away. And that's been the biggest issue, that they have a lot of attacks that hit like a wet noodle. Because they're low strength with no AP. So it's just bad attacks. So now they're trying to give that AP back that made them, that incentivized them in the first place. Is this a game changer, mate?
It is. The mathematically speaking, going from, say, your average space marine, right? Like an average space marine going against, say, a unit of incubi, right? Incubi being strength 4 and only AP 2 meant that, like, with an armor of contempt, 50, they were saving on force, right? And it became very tough to kill. Now there's another change that makes this even better, which we'll get to in like 2 seconds. But just changing the save from a 4 to a 5, big jump. But if they don't use the armor contempt and it goes from a 5 to a 6, it's like doubles the damage output when it comes to wounding. And I think that is a massive change. And it affects not just things like incubi, grotesques, talos, witches, like even a beast pack, lots and lots of little attacks that now all of a sudden have an armor piercing value, which means that the damage potential of the faction goes up, right? And that alone means that you can more reliably do damage and clear through the enemy units, which then brings back that sort of trade version of the Drukhari, which is you trade up. You send an 80-point unit to kill a 150-point unit, and you can do that twice, right? And at the end of the game, they run out of stuff before you do. That sort of thing.
Correct. All right, so let's jump into this new detachment. This is the Sky Splinter Assault. The Reign of Cruelty and is the detachment.
One more change. We did miss another big change is the Archon can join incubi units.
Yes, I was going to get that when I was talking about those units. But
that's a
fine.
main rule. That's just a main rule change.
You are correct.
And that just gives you ability to give reroll wound rolls.
I've been joking to people that thematically in my head, I always found it was funny because incubi in the fluff are hired by Archons to bodyguard them. And then in 10th edition, something happened in Comora, and they were just like, you guys, I've hired you. You're well paid. Just stand in the corner. I don't trust you.
Go over
in the corner. Over there.
In your own little thing, and you won't be able to kill anything. So you're not really protecting me at all.
But I can't. I need to be able to see where you are because I don't trust you. So just stay there. It's fantastic. Anyway, tell us. It's funny. This detachment rule is Reign of Cruelty, and it's rain as in it's raining cruelty. It's not rain as in like a tyrant's reign. I thought that was funny. Anyway, each time a Drukhari unit from your army disembarks from a transport, until the end of the turn, that unit's ranged weapons have the ignores cover ability, and its melee weapons have the lance ability. Oh my dearie my. chef's kiss, fan-freaking-tastic. Exactly everything Drukhari want to be doing in that trading game you were talking about, mate. Is this a good rule?
Well, we were talking about the increase of armor piercing, how important that is. Being able to just pop out of a transport and have your Dark Lance become AP3 ignore cover.
Yes.
The amount of times I had a Rhino make that 5-up cover save.
Oh yeah.
Is it just means that your range damage is going to be more. Like, yes, it's one Dark Lance at a time. We know, okay, you might hit, you might not wound or whatever. But at least if it wounds, it has a high likelihood of doing its high damage, which would be very useful. Things like the Blaster works really well with its AP4 into like infantry. And then you've got like rifles are AP0, sure, so like a 3-up save doesn't get better and or worse against it. But now if you run a bunch of rifles and shoot it like guardsmen, they don't get a better save. They just stay at their 4-up. And even something like mandrakes, for example, if they were in a transport, you get out, like that's a lot more shots or whatever. Anyway, so there's like lots of stuff you can do with it.
It is fantastic. I'm a big fan. All right, jumping in. Sorry?
The Lance is where it's at, because you then like Incubi +1 to wound, switches +1 to wound. Like there's so many things that can get in there, and now finally the strength debuffs that they had are a lot less relevant. Like if you need to go and kill monsters or whatever, like if you're playing into Tyranids or you're playing into demons, or you don't have to rely on your Dark Lance's tool to work for you anymore. Right, and it opens up a whole new phase of the game to play in, not just the shooting phase and the movement phase, but now the combat phase is a phase you can interact with.
Yeah, perfectly said, man. All right, let's jump into the enhancements. The first one is Phantasmal Smoke. It's Drukhari model only, hilariously. While the bearer's unit is wholly within 6 of a friendly Drukhari transport, models in the bearer's unit have the benefits of cover and stealth, so -1 to hit and +1 save. Seems like a good ability, but I'm not sure it's a great ability to have on Drukhari, but I'm hoping you're going to tell me otherwise.
No, you're right. It's like, okay, it's fun. I guess if you're playing like a more fun game, sure. It sort of lends itself well to, I have a Tantalus and I want to keep my so I'm like, I have a bigger unit near a Tantalus and I need it to be, and it's got a court, so it's -1 to wound. Now it's just -1 to hit, and it's it has a benefit of cover. So like I just get better saves, but it doesn't stop the issue of I'm toughness 3 and I just die, right?
Usually it's taking a pretty medium armor save into an okay armor save. Also, it's 20 points also.
Yeah, it's the it's the same price as the other one we'll see in a second. It's definitely not even close to just as good as that.
Well, tell us about the next one.
So the next one is, I don't know the name, but I know what it does. It basically allows you to when you empower a unit with a pain token, you can pick a transport within 6 inches and empower that transport as well.
Yep. So it's 3 inches, and it's called Sadistic Fulcrum. But yeah, apart from that, everything else you said is.
I think that's 15 points. And that one
works correct as well.
That one is very well with a Tantalus, right? So like that one, you get out, you make your big Core of the Archon unit empowered, and then that same pain token can then empower the Tantalus. Great in that setting. With a Venom or with a Raider, not as good.
Correct. Yeah, it's 1, maybe 2 guns. Otherwise, the next one is Spiteful Raider. Each time the bearer's unit destroys an enemy unit in the fight phase, if that enemy unit was in range of 1 or more objective markers, the bearer's unit was selected. When the bearer's unit was selected to fight, you gain an additional pain token. This one will run you
10 points.
10 points. How do you feel about it?
This is my second favorite. I think you're going to see this in almost every single list that uses this detachment. And it allows you to essentially have a unit that can go in, bully some units early in the game, and get you some pain tokens for your go turn, essentially, is what it comes down to.
I think it's pretty good. I think it's totally fine, especially with 10 points. The last one is the Nightmare Shroud. What does it do?
So the Nightmare Shroud is my favorite one.
Mine too.
Yes. So the model and their unit, the bearer and their unit, on a turn in which they disembark from a transport, cannot be overwatched. That's it.
Huge.
It's just immunity to Overwatch, which is fabulous.
Because I got to tell you, especially in the early index days of the edition, I was overwatching transports with aggressors and smoking them. It was bad. Overwatch is a bad time for Drukhari, almost always. If someone has built their army to have a good Overwatch option, that unit is a nightmare for Drukhari at times because, of course, you try and charge him, you die. You try and move near him, you die as well. So this is a fantastic one.
It is great. It's very, very good. I like this one. It's 20 points. You put it on an Archon, or if you want to, you could put it on a Succubus, right, and run it on a squad of witches. Like, there's lots of options with this one, and I think it is the one you're going to see. Like, you start your list with this enhancement plus an Archon at least, and then everything else that goes in your list.
And then everything else. Yeah, that's it. So that is the only thing I'd say about these enhancements. So I am not enamored with any of them. None of them slap me in the face. It's like, oh, I must take that at all costs. I would say Nightmare Shroud is pretty damn utility amazing, but the rest of them, I could take them or leave them.
Yep. I don't like in the list that I've been running. I don't use any of the others. I just use the Nightmare Shroud.
Yep, fair. All right, jumping down to the strats, of which, of course, there are 6. First of which, Vicious Blades, 1 CP, 5 phase. And it is not a. Well, of course, we'll read about when they're a battle tactic. 5 phase, just after a Drukhari transport from your army has selected its targets. That transport. After your transport is fought, select one enemy unit that was the target of one or more of those attacks and roll 1d6 for each model embarked within your transport, adding 1 to the result if that embarked enemy model is a rack model. For each 5+ the enemy suffers 1 mortal wound to a maximum of 6 mortal wounds. I'm also of the opinion, the reason I like this is because it combos with Tank Shock. So if you are charging with the Drukhari transport, I'm assuming you're going to be tank shocking. And if you're tank shocking and you didn't do what you wanted to do, because tank shocking happens, before this one does, you can drop this to try and get over the line. And so I quite like this, but it's not as reliable a stratagem as I would like. I'd like it to be a little more reliable for the 1 CP, because if you got 5 guys in a Venom, this thing is not worth it at all, unless they've got 1 wound left and you really need them dead. In a Raider, possibly not. But, like you said before, that Tantalus tank shock's pretty good for Drukhari, and then it can have 20 models in it. So, it's a good,
and it has its own mortal wounds as well. Like, if anything, it is situational mortal wounds are nothing to scoff at, right? So if you really need to take down a target, the fact that it's not limited to, like, target type means that it has more utility than you think. Like, if you're running into an Incarn or an Avatar or like a Satan or something that you just try and need to do damage to, you can use Grenade, you can use Tank Shock, and then you can like try and throw a couple more mortal wounds in with this. So it is a very good utilitarian stratagem. It works best if you have racks, and it does work best if you do it in, say, a Raider or a Tantalus, because you roll more dice with more people embarked. And it's 1 CP. Like, all of these strats are useful. You won't write home about them, but having another way to do mortals is not a bad thing.
I totally agree. Tell us about the next one.
I don't know what the name is.
Wraith-like Retreat. Okay. 1 CP.
So I think this is the transport being able to move away. Is that right? No, it's the fight and then move away. Yeah. So it's at the end of the fight phase. You pick an infantry unit that fought that phase. That's important to note. And you can do a fullback or normal move with them. The caveat being that unless they're witches, they have to end their move to embark inside of a transport.
Yeah. So if you're a witch unit, you just make the move. If you are any other unit, you must use that move to get in a transport. You must end that move wholly within 3 horizontally and 5 vertically of a friendly Drukhari transport, and must embark within it. Is this a good strat?
Yes. It is if you're taking witches specifically. Very, very good. It's less useful in other scenarios because a lot of the times you're already taking venoms that pretty much have this rule built in to being a venom. Where at the end of the fight phase, exactly right, you can just pick a unit, and if they're wholly, like within 6, they just hop into the venom. So like I'm using it more of as a technical tool because you lose strike and fade from the other detachment to charge witches into a rhino, not get killed, and then move the witches another 8 inches onto an objective, or move block or something like that. So you can leapfrog a unit of witches 8 inches away from a combat, right? Basically, and they can like get into a nice position. As for anything else, I guess you could, because it's a fullback and normal move, it allows you to kill a unit and then have the vehicle be further away than what it would normally be, and then hop back into it.
Yep.
So it's a technical tool. Like, sure, you
I
can
agree.
use it. It's good to have. It's not going to like be amazing.
All right, next up is Pounce on the Prey, 1 CP. Your movement phase just after a Drukhari infantry unit from your army disembarks from a transport that made a normal move this phase. That infantry unit, the effect is till the end of the turn, your unit is eligible to declare a charge. Yeah. So you
Amazing.
move the transport, get out of the. Well, every transport now has the Land Raider assault ramp, essentially.
Yep,
for
14
1 CP.
inches plus a 3 inches embark. You're looking at a 17-inch plus charge
So,
threat range, 29 inches from any vehicle.
Yes, exactly right.
It was much needed. Much
100%.
needed for the Dark Eldar, especially with the ability to do combat now. It just increases that threat range. Very, 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 very good. I like it. This is the best stratagem.
Because it used to be you had army-wide advance and charge from turn 2 onwards in the previous codex, in Architecture Codex. And so they needed some of that back, because right now the threat range of the Drukhari and how far you just need to be away from them to be entirely immune is pretty plottable. You can just figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm what would it be? You're getting out. It's usually getting out 11 inches. A lot of movement 8 on witches and incubi movement 7. Is that correct?
Yep.
They're 3-inch disembark, so 10 inches, and then if you are around 20 inches away from a venom with incubi in it, you're probably good. If they want to risk a 9 or a 10-inch charge with their best unit from a transport, probably happy with that. Especially if it's not your best unit, that's probably just fine. Now that unit just goes straight to your home objective and eats you in your boots, and you're not happy about it, which is good.
Yeah, this is very good. Now, of course, terrain dependent, of course, with the changes to fly, it's not as like oppressive as it would have been in editions past, being that you have to like fly around things.
Correct.
But being able to hide behind a wall that's, or behind a ruin and then fly in a certain direction, get out, charge, increasing that threat range, very, very useful, very important. This is a tool that as a Dark Eldar player, I will be using a lot.
100%. So far to me, that's the bread and butter. That's the slapping that down every turn. I got a good target for it. Skyborn Annihilation is next. This is a battle tactic. It is 1 CP. It happens in your shooting phase. 1 Drukhari unit from your army that disembarks from a transport this turn and has not been selected to shoot yet. Until the end of the phase, ranged weapons equipped by models in your unit have the Sustained Hits 1 ability or the Sustained Hits 2 ability if they're Cabalite warriors. And I got to tell you, I have actually entirely been impressed with Cabalite warriors as a good to medium shooting unit, and the fact that you have a pain token to chuck on them to get 4 rolls to hit in the shooting phase to really milk out sustained and sustained 2, I think makes this quite a good strat as well. How do you feel?
This is a good situational strat that is, something that if you have an extra CP, you're probably going to want to use it. Like, combined with Cabalite warriors, it's very, very good.
Yep.
A Venom with 5 Cabalites that have all guns inside is called a Skari boat. That's just what it's called now. And you move it into a corner. You disembark this unit of Cabalite warriors now because of the detachment. Ignore cover, right? Great, awesome. So Dark Lance, Blaster, all these guns, ignore cover, awesome. And then you give them a pain token, and then you give them the stratagem. And now all of a sudden, your Dark Lance hits on a 6, and it's 3 Dark Lance hits.
Yes.
That ignore cover. That's like a whole Scourge unit.
That
has just
real
hit.
Good.
Yeah,
real good.
It's awesome. And a lot of the times, because you're hitting with that Dark Lance on a 4 anyway, you tend to re-roll that roll a lot to try, and then you're more likely to just get that 6. Yeah. Anyway, it's a good little stratagem. You could use it on a big unit as well. You could use it on a unit of Mandrakes, for example, if you want more dev wounds out of a transport, if you're using a big 10-man unit. There's like lots of options with it, but with Cabalites, it's very nice.
Okay, on to the second last. Swooping Mockery, 1 CP, happens in your opponent's movement phase, just after an enemy unit ends a normal, advance, or fallback move. 1 Drukhari transport from your army that is not within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units and is within 9 of the unit that has just ended their move. Your transport can make a normal move of 6 inches. So 1 CP bug out if they're getting too close and you don't like it, or 1 CP jump on the objective that you weren't on and help flip things around. I like how open this is, but a lot of people have a version of this strat, and it makes a lot of sense that Drukhari would too. How do you feel?
Reactionary moves are very strong.
Yeah, agreed.
And I really do like it in combination with something like it allows you to sort of like give the illusion of overextension and not really overextend. You can run out of venom, move the venom, get out, charge, fight something, kill something, get back into venom. Somebody gets close to try kill venom, venom moves away, right? Like at its core, that's the simplest way of using it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other ways, like get aggressive with venom that's empty in your opponent's deployment zone. They have a lot of deep strikers. You're zoning out the board. They move something close to venom. Venom moves even further inside of their deployment zone to screen out even more. To like push their deep strikers further.
100%.
So there's like you forgot to, I don't know, you want to stop an enemy unit from moving. They move one unit, then the other. Then your venom goes into a corner and goes, "You can't move past this building," or "Now this monster can't move." Like there's lots of other ways you can use it, but having a reactionary move, excellent.
Or I pictured a Tantalus when you were talking about blocking people. Just being like,
yeah. If the Tantalus is that close, though, you're in a little bit of trouble.
But I meant for like, someone comes out thinking they're going to get on an objective, and then you just like wall.
Oh yeah.
That's a wall. Yeah, that's a broadside. Anyway, all right. Last strat: Night Shield, 1 CP. Your opponent's shooting phase just after enemy unit selected its targets. One Drukhari vehicle unit from your army that was selected as one of those targets. Until the end of the phase, your vehicle has a 4+ invulnerable save. 1 CP, 4+ invuln in the shooting phase. Reactively, I think is very good.
Yep.
And seeing as this entire detachment pivots around you having units in transports that can get out and then go to the moon, kind of special rule wise, I think this is a very important one to have. What do you think?
It's awesome. I think it makes something like a Tantalus viable. You can have one big tank that has a 4-up invul now. It allows you to have Ravagers. Have a Ravager.
Correct.
Pops out. Now the Ravager is a little bit more durable. That one Raider that it's hard to hide sometimes. You in a pinch you can give it a 4-up invul. So it's good to have it. Just to, it's a 4-up. You either pass them all or you fail it. Like it's just how it works.
Yeah. 100%. That actually brings us to the end of the rules section for the new detachment, mate. Quickly, out of 10, how good do you think this detachment is for Drukhari?
It's gone from about a 4.5, 5 to like an 8, an 8.5. Like I think it is a very big jump. I think it's a positive jump, and I think it's still going to require a lot of finesse to get the most out of it. However, it opens up a whole new playstyle that a lot of people enjoy, and it has a lot of tools that work very well into the current meta.
Yeah, this is the kind of detachment I love to see and I want to see more of, because it has a very, very design-heavy flavor to it. You know how this is supposed to work. And then me as an opponent, there is weaknesses here I can exploit. Essentially, if I let Drukhari get to me, they're going to get to me with as many rules as they feel like they need to kill me. But if I am proactive into Drukhari and I get them out of their boats on my terms, the army loses a lot of its luster. If a unit is not able to get out of a transport and then do a thing, shoot and or fight, if I just like blow that thing up in my turn and they're just standing there in their turn, the amount of rules that they can apply to that unit is like, I don't know, 3/4 less the damage efficiency. So it feels like if people can, be proactive into Drukhari, and that's exactly what Drukhari, how they want to play. They want to cordon you off. They want to contain you. They want to prey on you. They want to skin you alive on their terms when they're ready. And so if you're able to break out and start get to them, you get a lot of more agency in the game. I love seeing detachments that are well designed with pros and cons. Like a Drukhari player that can stage effectively, that can make use of these rules, is going to be a powerhouse. They're going to be absolutely terrifying, because they're going to have like little surgical units just coming out of everywhere, just eating your best units, and you're going to be like, what the hell happened to my army? But then, it's going to be really exciting. And I agree with you. You said 4 to about a 6 or a 7 now?
8. About an 8. I think it's more like an 8-ish. I don't think it's like S tier. I don't think it's like, I don't think it's A tier. It's about B plus, depending on how like good you are. Because it is still a bunch of toughness 3 models. And even though you can build a list that has like 30 units in it, right? Like if your opponent kills 10 of them in a single turn, you're just going to lose. So you have to you have to play it smartly. It's like still a finesse army, but it definitely has a lot more tools than it did before.
Yeah, totally agree, man. And I'm firmly with you. I think they're going to end up in the B plus ish area, because I think they have a lot of play into a huge amount of armies. But yeah, like you said, the things that they're relying upon to get through the game, to get through 5 turns against some very deadly armies, is just a very not durable chassis. And like I said, you got to be really proactive with this army. And but there is a lot to be excited about. There's so much even. But yeah, around the B tier is where I'm expecting them, which is way better than they were, because they were one of the bottom 3 factions in the freaking game.
They feel good, and that's like they
Yeah.
just feel right, and that's good. That's a good place to be at.
All right, now we are going to jump over to the 20-page rules commentary, which is mostly just clarifications and bits and pieces. I've pulled out a bunch of the ones that I think matter the most to people at home. I did, and shout out to Goonhammer, who I did peruse their review as well, just picking out the ones that I'd already had down, then just making sure that they had them down too. So there were none big ones that I missed or omitted, or I'm making a bigger deal out of than they are. I really struggle with this document, just putting it out there. It reads like VHS instructions to me. It's a hard time at the office. So thank you very much to other people who've put out reviews and stuff, and I'm able to go to the document to them, to the document to them, and I'm able to cross reference my own stuff to make sure I have my T's and C's correct and dotting my I's. So first of the rule clarifications and or just blanket rulings we're going to be expecting to play with in the game moving forward. The first one, I'm sorry, Scar, are you familiar with some of these?
Yep. Yeah, I've gone through them all.
Fantastic. So definitely you'll be able to give me a hand. The first one is counts as a normal move for triggered abilities. So this is stuff like Overwatch and so other bits and pieces. What's the clarification here, if you can tell us?
Well, if you count as moving, you don't move, but you count as normal moving, basically.
Yeah.
So it's just a clarification to be like, yes, even though you didn't move, it's kind of like you did do a move, if that makes sense.
So it would trigger anything that would trigger. So people are saying, well, I didn't actually move my models, but it says counts as moving. So can you do all the, can you move away from me? Can you overwatch me? Can all this stuff? And people just had a lot of questions there. So yes, you can for all those things, I think. It's now clarified you can 100% use the infiltrate ability if you were to have a redeploy. So I think there's only 2 armies in the game that do it. If I remember right, I think it's the Skatari Hunter cohort. And one of the Tyranid ones, probably the Vanguard.
Genes of the Cult.
Yes,
Necrons.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of factions that can take advantage of this. Yeah, and
that's saying when you redeploy before the start of the game, you get to, because it says redeploy in your deployment zone specifically, but now it says if you have infiltrate ability, you can infiltrate into the no man's land. Same terms and conditions apply.
Yeah, which is nice as a clarification, because if you have oh, I'm going to deploy on this flank, and then your opponent's like, oh, I'm going to counter deploy. We're like, well, before we know who goes first, we pick these up now instead of like putting them back into reserve or like in deployment zone. They're like, no, if they have infiltrate, they can just redeploy with infiltrate, which does make that sort of combo, I think, quite powerful.
A lot better, absolutely. Embarked units and reserves. So this has been a big consternation for quite some time. And in fact, I've seen many rulings go the opposite way of this. But what have they decided upon now?
So you can disembark after a unit comes in from reserve.
Yeah. So
it is a big deal, I think.
The term and condition here is that the disembarked unit must also be 9 inches away from any enemy units. So if I trundle on with an impulsor from the side of the board, and then I want to disembark the Hellblasters inside, those Hellblasters must also be 9 inches away. The same conditions apply.
Nice clarification there, but it does mean that like if you do want to like every vehicle is sort of like a drop pod now, right?
Yes.
Like you just can get out. When you come in from reserve, you just get out, and then you're not allowed to do a charge unless like specifically allowed, I guess, kind of like, with a Land Raider or for whatever, right?
But this is a big deal, right? This is actually, I would have thought no. If you had have asked me, I would like probably not, just for the sake of the game. Because it did get a little messy, which way it was going to go. Does this really open up any playbooks for armies, especially Drukhari?
Well, I think being able to just jump out of a transfer when it comes in is useful. The biggest thing is the threat of trying to make a 9-inch charge. So it's like it becomes a lot more relevant if you have some sort of charge bonus other than just a reroll. And then maybe there's a little bit more play, like being able. I think one of the biggest uses of this is trying to get onto an objective that's further than 6 inches from the edge of the board. So
That's
like
true.
if the objective is you can't get to it because it's like just further up, like you can move your transport up, they disembark, they can be further, the unit disembark can be further than 6, therefore you can like put them on the objective or behind that building or whatever it is you need to do, right? So I think there's like play with it, but I don't
absolutely
think it doesn't break the game.
Well, there are units that move after shooting as well that could be in transports. So you could, as long as they're 9 inches away from this move, will not take them within 9 inches of the enemy. You could bring on or deep strike the transport, get the unit out, shoot the unit, move the unit, fire and fade it, so to speak. Or there's plenty of other ways to do that. So yeah, I think this opens up quite a bit of playbook, quite a bit of niche jank play. A blanket rule has been made for sticky objectives because there was a lot of GW does this every edition, but this edition has been the best of it so far, where everyone's rule that says sticky objectives was kind of different. As in some were removed at the end of the turn, some at the end of XYZ
some at the start of the command phase, some were like now they're just like just check at the end of every phase, and that's
at the end of every phase. If you no longer got it, you no longer got it, and then or the end, start or end of any turn. So that's just it. That's just it now. If you're sticking objective, end of any phase or
part of any turn is relevant because things like doing a cleanse now on like, for example, the ritual, right? Before you wouldn't be able to control the objective that you summoned. So you wouldn't get the cleanse. Now though, you can do it. You can like summon an objective and cleanse it, and then you do both at the end. So now you can check control at the end of the turn, which means you can do your action and stuff and summon objectives and things like that.
That's actually very interesting. Ignores modifiers is now clarified to ignore damage modifiers. Now, this is a big deal because notably for Trajan, and I will see if we can conjure up any in our minds of other implications, but it's saying that if you ignore the negatives to hit, and negatives to wound, etc., etc. You also ignore negative to damage, which I kind of always assumed it should, but then we've had rulings both ways in the past, and now GW's just come out and said, "Yep, cool. You ignore the damage modifier as well." Where this is key is that it makes Trajan Valoris now rickroll mollywops Catan like no one else's business, and essentially he's kind of the best thing in the game, really killing a Catan. Can you think of anyone else who has ignore mods as good as he does?
Well, we got Mortarion, but he doesn't in Aura, right? Then you've got a stratagem for the Space Marine. What is it? The Strike Force or whatever, the vehicle one, where you can give it to like a Dreadnought, right? That ignores all modifiers, so you can be really good. There's I think a
some of those are ignore, because there are a lot of ignores modifiers that have caveats that say just ignore the hit roll modifiers and ballistic skill modifiers. There are plenty of them out there like that, which is why I think people are honing in on Trajan because he ignores all of them.
He does. So does Mortarion, I think. Mortarion is another blanket one, so he's pretty good with that. So all in all, it does yes, it's good they clarified it because it was like some events were like one way, some events were another. Now it's just one ruling to rule them all. Awesome. Now we know. Maybe Trajan's really good at killing Catan, but that's great because there's going to be so many of them. We're going to need something to put into that matchup.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. The next one is just a nerf to GSC as far as I can tell. I read this one and I was like, what? Okay. You cannot use single shot weapons from firing decks.
That's a Dustin Henshaw special. So they're just like, Dustin, we're going to make your gene sealers cheaper, but we're going to take away
your
the
acolytes.
one thing. So I just laugh at that and say, who else did that? Maybe Uri and Rakarth in itAdam. That's it. That was like the only time I ever did it, was like flaming unlimitedly with Uri and Rakarth's one-shot flamer from itAdam.
The way they've written firing deck in this edition, the fact that they've written it as it's the tank, the transport is firing using that, meant that there was a lot of jank ability where you could have in this example, acolytes with blasting charges inside, or demo charges inside a transport. They throw them, the transport's now used it, and then they get out and they've still got them, and then they throw them. Because they didn't throw them, the transport threw them, even though they were throwing them from the back of the transport. You see where we're going here. So GW has just been like, every solution we come up with is dumb, so there is no solution, you can't do it anymore. Essentially.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, no, you're just not allowed. Stop trying.
Stop it. Stop it. Cease.
Enough of this.
I do have to say this is the worst solution, and it shows that they just didn't have a good one.
It's one of those things where they're like, yeah, we're gonna have. So how are we gonna do open top this edition, Fred? Well, Frank, I think we should just make that. Okay, you just pick a bunch of weapons, and then the tank shoots them. Yeah, that sounds great. There's not any problems with that. Out comes Gene Stealer Cult. Okay, so these are one-shot weapons. I can shoot all of them out of this little truck, can I? And I don't use them. Technically, the tank does.
Mm-hmm. Lol.
LOL. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Arriving from reserve turn 1. What has changed here?
So if you get put into strategic reserve, I think on turn 1, you just count as the turn 1 higher for the first battle round. I think all it does, it clarifies the whole. If you are allowed to come in, like if you go back into reserve on that first turn, you can come in on the bottom of the first turn. It just clarifies the whole. Can you not? Is it strategic? Is it not? Is it deep strike? Is it not? Like I think they just went no. Like these units are kind of designed to like force you to screen out from the beginning of the game, sort of thing.
Yeah. In addition to that, I believe it means it counts as a turn 2 for strategic reserve. So if you have to walk on, because what turn do I count it as? And it will count it as turn 2's strategic reserve. So you can't come in your opponent's deployment zone, but definitely in the board edges. Yeah. Okay, are there any that I've missed? There are a bunch of small minor clarifications that I'm not going to bother people with, but those are the big ones that I think will actually be things people need to know in order to be playing games immediately. And then there may be some that come up in the future for people. And you feel free to learn those. If you
find any or we forgot any, please leave a comment, let us know.
That's it.
Interact. Put a comment down below or put a message and be like, hey, you guys are morons. You forgot this one and you forgot that one.
Pathetic. How dare you? How dare
we call ourselves professionals?
One red line in this 20-page document. How dare I? Just pathetic. Disgusting. Anyway, that's going to wrap us up for this part 1, guys. Hopefully you found an informative journey through the new take on the denizens of Comora that GW has been lovingly enough to bestow upon them. And then also, some designs, commentary stuff, just some good stuff that you need to know, to rules clarification stuff to help you along with your games, either, using them yourselves or being used against you. But Skari, anything you'd like to say or mention before we check out?
Well, thanks a lot for listening. Go head on over to part 2. Which is awesome, and we'll see you on the flip side. If you have any questions, you can always reach out. You know where I am, and if you don't, find me, because there's only but one Skari.
All right, well, let's get out of here. Say the line, mate.
The Dark Kid.
You did it.
Thank you for listening to Art of War Down Under, a content review podcast for Warhammer 40K, hosted by Adam Camilleri, produced by Seamus Ronan. Enjoyed the show? Want your lists reviewed and the content you heard put into practice? Sign up to our Patreon and connect with us online or on Facebook. Just search for Art of War Down Under. Signing out from tomorrow.